Hello and welcome to this sonnenAcademy accreditation training video. In this video we're going to be looking at some of the common accessories used with the sonnenBatterie systems, labels, backup and the outdoor enclosure. Now to start with, let's have a quick look at the labelling requirements. With all the main units which are supplied with the Sonnen systems, what you also receive will be an accessory kit. Inside that kit you get all the various different manuals, documentation, you get the metering and CTs, some switch gear, but also most importantly you get the labels and an instruction leaflet describing where the labels need to be installed. All the label kits have actually been designed within the requirements of AS3000, 4777 and all of the other relevant Australian standards. So here we have a standard switchboard, and as you can see here, most important label is the AC isolation, the metering isolator, the sonnenBatterie power meter itself. On the outside of the enclosure we need to put the shutdown procedure. We also need to put the label which is describing the fact that the battery system exists. Either on the sonnenBatterie system itself or adjacent to it, you also then need a shutdown procedure. Also labelling here the AC isolator, DC isolator for the PV, this being a hybrid system. Now for the backup, what we're going to talk about here is the sonnenProtect 2500 for the hybrid 9.53 sonnenBatterie system. So this accessory on itself comes in its own box, very clearly labelled, so you know exactly what it is. The sonnenBatterie 2500 is a 2.5 kilowatt output. It can peak at 3 kilowatts, but only for around 20 seconds. It's designed to supply dedicated backup loads, which also need to be designed in such a way to only be able to supply 10 amps of backup power, so 2.5 kilowatts. The sonnenProtect itself also has around a 15-second switchover period in which the Sonnen system has to ramp up the power output to be able to supply all those backup loads. This product is not a UPS, so please don't expect it to be an uninterruptible power supply. It is a backup supply designed specifically to supply essential loads. Now as you can see here, we've got 3 primary cables, one being the grid supply, one being the supply from the sonnenBatterie system, and one being the output supply to the backup loads. So first off, obviously we fix the system to the wall, and that's all that's needed to be done from the inside. Then we just go through the steps of connecting up all the various different cables. So for illustration purposes here, I've installed this underneath the main switchboard. And connection number 1 being the nominal grid supply. So the way in which the Sonnen backup actually works, normal grid supply operation, the actual supply to the essential loads comes to the normal grid supply. So all that you need to do here, you see, is just connect up the supply to the sonnenBatterie Protect 2500 as though at any normal load circuit. So here we go, the AC supply just coming off the bottom of the main AC. So if the grid were to fail, obviously that supply gets cut off and the supply internally gets switched from the sonnenBatterie itself. Okay, so now that that's done, we obviously need to label that isolator for the backup supply. And then what we do is we wire up a dedicated backup switchboard. So what I've done for here, illustrative purposes, is I've just created a little switchboard that's supplying 3 loads. All those loads in an ideal scenario would not exceed the 2.5 kilowatts as previously explained. So all you need to do is just consider this a supply cable, the supply coming from the sonnenBatterie Protect, either directly from the AC or directly from the sonnenBatterie itself, depending on the grid status. So just wire it neutral, earth, and then live or active to the main isolator, which becomes the main breaker. Clearly label this. This is really important. This really does need to be clearly labelled backup or essential loads, because if the grid has gone down, or if someone's working on the system, on the property, these circuits will obviously be energized. And there we go. Again, very clearly labelled. And finally, it's now just a case of connecting the Sonnen backup, the 2.5 Protect, to the Sonnen itself. Now this comes from a pre-wired cable, which all it is the case of is just literally running it up to the top of the Sonnen system and plugging it in. And that's it. As simple as that. The one feature that this product does have is also black start. So if the grid has ever failed and we got PV into the 9.53 as this one, that the system will be able to wake itself up in the morning and carry on supplying those essential loads regardless of whether or not the grid is still in place. It's a very simple installation. Labelling is obviously very important. Simply to turn it all on, loads, turn on the Protect. It comes with an inbuilt RCD, then main grid supply and everything else. Nice, simple and straightforward. Now as you can see here, we've got the blue light on the Sonnen. If that were to go to green, it tells you that the system is running a backup. Now on to the next one. Let's have a quick look at the Sonnen enclosure. So the Sonnen enclosure, this is designed for outdoor applications. It's an IP55 rated enclosure, and it is a product which comes flat packed. So this video is really just explaining to you how to assemble the product, because there's a right way and there is most definitely a wrong way. If you don't follow this step-by-step process, you'll find you get to certain stages and you don't have enough play in the product to be able to assemble it correctly. So first things first, you set out the top and the bottom, which come pre-assembled, and then we have 4 vertical rails which join those. Each of those rails are actually spaced, so on the left and right hand side they have to be specifically spaced, and it's always a good idea to stick these spaces on prior to assembly. The main reason being is that, as you'll see in the videos that comes shortly, that the top rail can sit on these supports as you're putting the thing together. The exact positioning of these braces doesn't actually matter specifically, but it's a really good idea if you do them centrally and set them out as per the markings in this video. And obviously we'll repeat the process for the other side. So make up these 2 assemblies first. It is by far the simplest way to approach assembling this product. Next step is then to slot these into the bottom section of the enclosure. A slight twist enables you to have the connection lock itself in place. As you can see, you just twist it out and slide it back in. The hinges are set to the right hand side as the front, so again twist those, and as you can see, that brace there helps to support that rail, and this being the locking mechanism for the door, which sits at the left. So as the unit's sitting on the floor at the moment, it's back to the floor and it's facing the ceiling. Now before any of those panels and bracings are fixed in position, slot the top in place, because you need a certain amount of play in those vertical sections to be able to make these connections here, as you can see. Given the way that the system locks into each other, there's no danger of it falling apart if you're following this process, although none of the actual fixings are there. Then it's just a simple case of taking these nuts and just fixing all of the vertical rails to the top and bottom, which makes up the main foundation, the main core structure of the enclosure itself. And there we have it. Now what we do, flip the system over, or flip the cabinet over, because what you need to do is get to the fixings which were facing the bottom. And also while you're there, what you need to do is fix the bracings between the two vertical struts together, which is the next step once all these screws are in. So again, get all the braces fixed in place, which then makes the overall system have its total integrity. Next step, flip it back over again onto its back, because what we're now going to do is put in the mounting panel. The mounting panel being the section that the actual sonnenBatterie itself fixes to. To mount the mounting panel, there is a top section and a bottom section. This bottom section, as you can see, has the protruding nuts, which locate in holes which are actually in the mounting panel itself. The top section has them facing the other way, so they're very easy to identify. The two are different. So both those rails go in and fix those in place. Top one in, and now the bottom one in. Make sure they're pushed right up against the top and bottom section as well. Now as you can see here on the mounting plate, there's the holes which now go at the very top because they fit onto the lugs which I previously explained to you. Now what's a good tip here is I don't put it fully flat back. What I do is I just allow the very top section to click. See, the very top section is held up, which means I can slide it down to locate it in those pins, and then it will drop down. Then just take the two long bolts and just screw those in at the very top, and then that whole rear panel, the mounting panel, is securely fixed in place. Then we upend it, stick it onto its base. Then at this point, get it pretty much where it needs to go, because once we get all the side panels on and the door on, it does get pretty heavy. Also at this point, it's worth considering how you're going to bring your cables in to the actual enclosure to connect to the sonnen system. You can take them in through any of the side panels, either the sides or the back, or even for the top. It doesn't really matter, but just make sure you planned ahead. So here we go, we get the back section on, fixed in place all the various different nuts, little screws. Each one of these comes with a little washer and a rubber seal to ensure that we keep the IP55 integrity of the enclosure. The enclosure itself doesn't actually need to be fixed against the wall because it is a freestanding unit. So now that the back's on, I can just slide it into position. And like I say, it doesn't need to be fixed into place. Now what I do normally at this stage is I'd actually mount the sonnen system inside it and run all the cables before getting all the cladding on, just because it's an awful lot easier to get access to everything. But for the purposes of this video, I'm now just going to stick the sides on. the other side. Then we're done. Now we take the hinge pins. So these are the pins which hold the main door panel on. The way in which it's actually designed is quite simple to install. You can locate the pins and the door will hold itself in position and then drop the pin in. So the pins drop in to within about 1 centimetre, and then they just need a slight tap just to make sure that they're in and secure. And there we have it, the outdoor enclosure, fully lockable for added security.